Do you know how those Afghani black-bearded boys like to execute people? By chopping people's heads off. Meet the Taliban, world's newest and hottest superstar of the terrorists on the world, freshly created by none other than the United States of America. Well, by the US politicians. I don't dare to say that it's because of the US Army. I actually think that the US Army did a darn good job in Afghanistan. In this video, I would like to tell you what here in Russia we think the consequences of this terrible, huge, unthinkable disaster that's unfolding right now in Afghanistan will be in the near future. For the United States, for us, the Russians, and pretty much for the entire world. Let's get right into it. If you're meeting for the first time, my name is Konstantin and welcome to Letters to King. We're living in today's Russia explained by the insider you can trust, that's me. And if you're a returning viewer, then thank you so much, you're awesome and you rock. Please keep on coming back for more. Why do I find myself being qualified speaking on such a tragic and sensitive issue? It's because me and all my fellow Russians, we've had some experience of invading Afghanistan and pretty much being kicked out of that country. We know how it is. And what's happening right now is the repeat of the Soviet invasion, only it's like a repeat from the worst nightmare. So much worse than what happened with Soviet Union and Afghanistan back in the 80s. Let me give you a brief history lesson. Afghanistan has seen many wars. In the recent years, the Englishmen tried to invade Afghanistan, the Soviets and the Americans. Englishmen 100 years ago, the Soviets 79 to 89, and the Americans 2001 to 2021. For Soviet Union, that was a very painful war that took lots of young boys' lives. Around 15,000 soldiers did not come back home. And it took 34 billion Soviet rubles. That was a lot of money back in the days. And basically became one of the main reasons that Soviet Union fell apart. Indirectly, Afghanistan destroyed Soviet Empire. Now, to the United States. The people losses are not so great as the Soviets. As far as I understand, there were around 7,000 people lost over the course of 20 years. The economic damage to the country has been kind of unthinkable. Over $2 trillion have been spent over 20 years. And the spendings, they haven't stopped. Because most of that, all of that debt, all those $2 trillion were borrowed money, financed basically, and the United States will be paying interests for decades to come. But hey, forget about money, it's too bad that people died there. So the Soviets lost the war, they learned the lesson. The Americans lost the war, they learned the lesson. Those two wars are pretty similar, actually. We used similar bases. Bagram, Shindad, Kabul. We actually built military bases and left them behind, and the Americans came 10 years later, occupied our bases. You guys use them? Hey, no problem there. The biggest similarity of both wars for me is the reason why our countries invaded Afghanistan. No reason. Both of our countries were not needed to be there. Us, Soviets, we were given some crap excuse of Russian troops helping Afghani people, doing the duty of friendship, international friendship. Oh my God, facepalm, We never believed it. I won't even go there. As far as I remember, the Americans invaded Afghanistan to take revenge for 9/11. Find Osama bin Laden, who wasn't located in Afghanistan, and they were taking out their wrath on Taliban. Well, Taliban, as you remember, they were friends of the United States. I remember Taliban coming over, official Taliban government, friends with the United States. Yes, if you guys remember, look back in the 90s. The Taliban delegations would come to different states and have press conferences, with American politicians. I remember one of the press conferences in Texas where Taliban came and one of the lady legislator started asking them very, very uneasy questions about human rights in Afghanistan and so forth. And I remember this bearded Taliban guy, like a minister or something, he started screaming at the lady saying, "Hey, woman, you have no right to be here. You should stay at home with kids and like cook for your husband." And that was in America at live press conference back in, don't quote me on that, but it was late 90s, 99 or 2000. I think you can find it in some kind of a movie. I think Fahrenheit 9/11 or something like that. So anyway, the Taliban they weren't really terrorists, okay? Were they helping Al-Qaeda? Al-Qaeda was the bad guys. The Taliban were kind of the good guys because they had been fighting Soviets and they kicked Soviets' butts. Fast forward to 2001 and the United States strikes Taliban, invades Afghanistan, stating that Taliban supports and helps Al-Qaeda somehow. Even back then, it was clearly understandable that the reason is bogus. Taliban did not have any terrorist camps in Afghanistan for Al-Qaeda. Pakistan is the country that needed to be focused on. Pakistan and Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia financed, Pakistan provided all the help. And Osama bin Laden resided in Pakistan. Anyway, invaded Afghanistan, okay. What's done is done, right? Spent there 20 years, what's done is done. People, human lives lost, 66,000 Afghanis, from Afghani National Army were killed, by the way. That's a lot. But what's done is done. We cannot bring back those people. Now, the US President Donald Trump announced that he was withdrawing troops from Afghanistan. I think it was long overdue. And he set the date, May of 2021. Joe Biden came into power in January of 2021. So he extended this period by a few months. And the withdrawal of the troops started in August of 2021. So Joe Biden had 8 months to oversee the entire operation, to make sure that it's planned, it's, organized and executed in very, very professional manner. What are we having right now? A huge disaster. The US Army pulled out of Afghanistan, leaving the American civilians behind, the American diplomats behind, and the American cutting edge, the best, the most advanced, the most sought after hardware behind. Wow! And I am not even talking about all those tens and perhaps hundreds of civilian Afghans who were helping the US troops, the US Army, during those 20 years. We've got to realize that this is the biggest military disaster the United States has gone through in its entire history. There are a lot of finger pointing going on right now. The Republicans pointing fingers at Joe Biden. The Democrats pointing fingers at Donald Trump. They're pointing fingers at each other. The Republican senators to the Democratic senators to Republican senators. Let's forget about whose fault that is. The Democrats, the Republicans, whatever. It doesn't really matter. I would like to give you my scoop, how this disaster is seen from Russia and what this disaster means for Russia, because I live in Russia, for the rest of the world and for the United States. To me, the consequences are pretty horrible and pretty obvious. So let's find out. First, you've got to understand that the Taliban had not been big of a terrorist group. They actually weren't even terrorists at all. They are businessmen and the drug dealers. They grow drugs. Afghanistan is the largest grower of opioids in the world and ship them all over the world. That's an international corporation. Might as well call it the Taliban. They were never big about terrorism. They were never big about, blowing up things in their other countries and, things like that. They mostly live in Pakistan. They have their businesses, their families in Pakistan. They're financed by Pakistan. Pakistan has huge interest inside of Afghanistan. China also has great interest in Afghanistan. Not because of the drugs, not because of, this influence, but for mineral resources, cobalt and lithium. Afghanistan is very rich for these minerals, and they are very sought after these days because the entire world is switching to the electric cars. So China needs to be in Afghanistan. But until recently, Afghanistan was the area controlled by the United States. No place for Chinese there until recently. The United States had lame excuse of being in Afghanistan. And I agree that the troops needed to be withdrawn. That's a very sound and logical decision. But the way the withdrawal was executed... Anyway, what's happening now? Consequence number one. Huge blow to the United States. First of all, Americans are not out of Afghanistan until right now. Around 8,000 people, American nationals, are still in Afghanistan. If they caught by Taliban, guess what the boys will do to them? Then, there are so many hundreds of Afghani nationals who were promised political asylum in the United States, who were promised to be transferred to the United States, who were promised protection from the Taliban, are still there. Guess what the Taliban will soon do to them? That's a human rights tragedy. It's just, there's so many lives will be lost. Then we're not even talking about other countries' nationals. The Russians, I don't know, the Europeans, the Asians who are in Afghanistan without any possibility of leaving. And State Department just announced, officially made a statement that it cannot provide any safe passage for anyone, including American citizens, out of Afghanistan. And I bet it will not be able to do that in the near future, because how can it be? Americans are out, there are no troops. Consequence number two is there is a new star in this shady world of terrorism, the Taliban, born with a bang. No one knew of them yesterday, but today they are the world's hottest, the most hip, the most famous, the most legendary group of people. Terrorists. A small group of terrorists. 75,000 people. They kicked butt of the American army, and that's a formidable force, mind you. Then in 30 hours, they kicked out the butts of 300,000 Afghani army, supplied by the US Army with the latest hardware and trained by the American army for 20 years. Those Afghanis were trained by Americans entire life. Think about it, 20 years. They were career military personnel. They joined when they were 20, now they're 40. They must be like the best Spetsnaz, the most elite military in the world. Gosh. And guess what? Taliban just crushed all of them. I think they just enjoying the moment right now. They're posing in front of the cameras, including the cameras of American journalists, showing off their brand new machine guns, American machine guns, brand new hardware, all decked out in American uniforms, just like in this picture. And they are proud, and they're happy, and they're famous. All terrorist groups right now are going to look up Taliban. Consequence number three is the military hardware. I don't understand why the United States, the army, the Joint Chiefs of Staff and so forth, I don't know what they call it, left all brand spanking new military equipment, cutting-edge military equipment, the best in the world, that no one remotely has. Black Hawks helicopters, planes, tanks, machine guns, night vision goggles, you name it. Hundreds of thousands of units have been left in Afghanistan. One question, why? If your planning was so poor that you could not take everything out of Afghanistan, you should have destroyed everything, okay? Blow it up, but don't leave it to Taliban. Taliban right now is one of the world's most well-armed and equipped army, because they just came in and picked up what was left, and probably they're pretty happy about it. Consequence number four, the United States has just had biggest blow to its military advanced technology. Guess where those Black Hawk helicopters are going to? Do you think that Taliban are going to fly the helicopters? Do you think they're gonna drive and shoot tanks? They're gonna, take all of that and use it? No freaking way. Taliban is about money, okay? They're going to sell it to the highest bidder. And the highest bidder will be who? That's right, your friendly neighborhood country, China. And Russia will be second in line because, hey, it's, in Russia we called it аттракцион невидимой щедрости, the show-off of unprecedented generosity. That's what the United States just did to its competitors. It showed unprecedented generosity. Well, thank you so much. I mean, I personally would love to that you guys take your hardware and do not leave it to the Russians or the Chinese, because that's going to make world more unstable. But you just did. By the way, when Soviets left Soviet Union back in 1989, not one single piece of hardware, gun, tank, helicopter equipment, nothing was left in Afghanistan. Everything was evacuated. Right in the inside of Soviet Union, right on this side of the border, Afghanistan on that side of the border, right? The Soviet army created a huge cemetery. We called it Tank Cemetery. It's still there. It's in the city, Uzbekistan city of Termez. Okay, you could see hundreds, perhaps thousands of tanks, troop carriers, your helicopters. They're just standing there in the desert rusting, but they're safely guarded. Okay, they're just rusting out. They were not left in Afghanistan. They did not go to the hands of Chinese or Americans, because back then, it could have been a disaster for Soviet army. Consequence number 5 is Afghanistan now is a huge field for all kinds of bad people with no law whatsoever. It's an attraction it's like a magnet to come there, establish a camp for any purpose, to train, whatever, do whatever you want. All you have to do is pay Taliban a little bit. It's their country, it's their territory. They control it 100%. Very soon, it will be world's center of very bad people. Consequence number 6. The global safety has taken a huge hit. In the recent years, Taliban were fighting the American army. They cannot really go face to face with the American soldiers. Instead, they use suicide bomber tactics. They recruit people, they train them, they send them to blow themselves up. That's been their tactics for years. Now Afghanistan is theirs. They have no one to blow out anymore. The people they don't like, they can just take and chop their head off. And I'm sure we'll be hearing plenty of that in the news. But all those suicide bombers are still there. They are trained and they're ready to go. Where are they gonna go? Afghanistan? No, it's not needed anymore. Well, Afghanistan has its northern neighbor, Russia. I'm sure that a lot of those suicide bombers are coming our way already. And some of them probably will be filtered out and stopped by Russian KGB. By the way, thank you guys so much. You do lots of bad things, but one of the good things you do is take care of the terrorists. Thank you so much. From me and my family. Consequence number 7 is to say that the United States has lost its face is to say nothing at all. Do you guys realize what has happened in the recent week? Do you realize that the United States is not considered a friend and protector by its closest allies from Europe, from NATO? Those Afghani guys are good as dead because they're left to deal face-to-face with Taliban after helping the American army for so long. Basically, the United States left all those Afghani officials helping the American army for so many years, left to die in Afghanistan. And the entire world is seeing that. The next time the US will ask someone for help, saying, we guarantee you safety, we will pay you, people are going to say, thank you, but no thank you, because we've seen what happened in Afghanistan. It's such a blow to America's image because its army has been kicked out in the most unfavorable, shameful way. Its army left behind all the hardware. I mean, what kind of planning there is? It clearly shows that there is either a treason committed in the United States by the US officials, and at this point I don't understand. It's so easy to see the written orders of certain officials who actually ordered to leave the hardware behind. That's called treason in, you know, the rest of the world. I don't know how it's called in the United States. It's either treason or it's a stupidity of cosmic scale, which I don't believe that the US Army officials that, you know, Joint Chiefs and so forth, I don't believe they're stupid. Everyone is seeing that. The entire world is boiling. Everyone, Europe, Russia, Asia, China, Chinese are having a ball. All the Chinese national media right now, they don't even comment. They just show footage from Afghanistan. And they're saying Americans did that. Another blow to the United States is that there's clearly an understanding at every country right now that the USA does not have strong leadership. Not the president. Hey, you cannot go on vacation when you have a crisis of this scale happening right in front of your nose. You just can't do that, you know. There's no leadership in Pentagon because, hey, how can you allow that to happen, okay? There is no leadership in Senate. The entire world is seeing that people in America just pointing fingers at each other. There's not one single person to stand up and step forward and saying, hey, I'm going to unite Republicans, Americans, I'm gonna do it right now, and you know what, let's forget about all our party disagreements, let's get the people out. No, 8,000 Americans are still in Afghanistan with no plans of getting them out in the near future whatsoever. There's not such a leader in the United States, you know, and that's probably the worst consequence out of like this whole mess. I've named you 7 consequences. I could come up with a few more if I really thought about it, because I'm making this video kind of spontaneously with no script or anything like that. I can't, you know, I gotta share my opinion. I can't watch this anymore. It's so infuriating. I don't know how about you guys, but for us Russians, we're upset about this whole thing, you know. By the way, my question of the day is, what do you think about what's going on in Afghanistan? What's going on with your country? What's going on with your leadership? Perhaps I'm missing something. Perhaps I don't really get true information. You let me know. Although I watch Fox News and CNN and I see all this finger pointing going on and this whole footage from Afghanistan, but perhaps you know something that I don't. Please, in the comments down below, let me know, what do you think of this whole mess? And if you disagree with it, why aren't you doing anything about it? This is your country. This is your freedoms. This is your country. This is your army. This is your politicians elected by you, you know. If you found it interesting, give it a like, and thank you for watching. I'll see you soon.